All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Erik and Eric show. One is spelled properly. I'll let you decide. Eric, welcome to the show. I told you I was going to give you a hard time on that. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Eric? Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Do you feel like when you say "How's it going, Eric" that you're talking to yourself? Is it weird?
a little bit. I have, you know what? I don't know if it's just me. Tell me if this is true for you too, Eric. Have
Okay.
you been in other jobs or other places, maybe your current one, where there's at least one other Eric that's a
Yeah.
computer guy,
Yeah.
that like a tech guy in your work? And it
Yeah.
seems like every job I've had since in the last 10 plus years, there's always another Eric, like, oh,
Yeah.
you're the other Eric that does computers and tech and is a developer. It's pretty common.
Every single place. In fact, I tell a story, and I'll tell the very abbreviated story. I got stopped I was traveling to Turkey to do a serverless show, to speak at a conference, and I got stopped at the border because they thought I was an Eric Daniel Johnson, that's my full name. Another one was a criminal and couldn't cross the border, and I was detained for an hour and a half.
Oh
At
no.
literally with two armed guards. And finally, now here's the fun part. Finally, I said, "Look, do you got prints on this guy?" And they said, "Of course we have prints on this guy." I said, "If you got more than two, I'm not your guy." So it was pretty crazy. So, all right. So what we're here to get started. We're going to be talking about Amplify and actually Gen 2. And tell us who you are, Eric, just so the folks know.
Yeah. I am a senior developer advocate at AWS here. I have been focusing mostly on Amplify in my career at AWS. I started here. We were just talking about this. I know you have quite a few more years than me
I'm
here
old. Yeah.
on here, but I started about three and a half years ago. I got hired on as a front end engineer in the Amplify UI team. I did that for a couple of years, and then I just really liked teaching and just like yourself and talking to people. And I moved over to the developer advocate role, and that's where I've been ever since. So, been teaching people about front end and Amplify. One common thing a lot of people maybe don't realize is that we have quite a bit of resources for the front end for AWS users. So
Yeah.
a lot of services that you have out there that are just wrappers for AWS. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you can actually just go to AWS directly, and we have tools, especially if you're a front end developer, to work with AWS. And that's a little bit of what I do here and advocate for.
I'm super excited about that. I'll tell you what. First of all, we've got some other folks excited. We've got Daryl up there. So, hi guys, Amplify Gen 2 looks really nice. Still using Gen 1, but have to move at some point. Daryl, now's your time. We have the Eric show to help you do that. So super excited about that. So just a little bit, Eric, just so you know, I have worked with some of those rappers you were talking about. I don't know if you're familiar with Jeremy Daly's Amped. They're doing this, Elad and Wing. I've got some others that I'm looking at, and I've spent a little time with Amplify Gen 2 as well. And now I'm going to say this, okay, and then you could go, "No, Eric, that's all wrong, but thanks for playing." Or you could go, "Yeah, you kind of got it," so just be honest with me. But with the Gen 2, we're getting into this kind of infrastructure from code, would we be able to say?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay. There we go. There we go. So I'm with it here. And so as you build, and obviously it doesn't make sense for me to talk all through this, but as you build, it's going to generate or it's going to infer the code from this, or the infrastructure from this.
Yeah. So
Okay.
to kind of put a point to that, the way the thought process was, and someone mentioned Gen 1. So if you never heard of Gen 1 or Gen 2, it's just tools to help like create AWS apps. So in Gen 1, there was a command line interface tool that you just typed in like amplify add auth. It was ran through, like, it was an npm module basically that you can install globally, and then you can run amplify add auth or amplify add data or amplify add API, and it would just create all these cloud formation files in the background and scripts, and it would generate everything for you. And there was ways you could expand into that. So if you there was a use case that you had that didn't fall into our command line tools, you could basically write CDK directly into a file, and it works great. And we still support Gen 1. We are happy with many of our, we are happy with Gen 1. We're happy with our Gen 1 where it is right now. But what we wanted to do with Gen 2 was, rather than having this command line interface, we wanted to give more flexibility for developers to create apps. Okay. And we looked and we were inspired by other tools out there, Terraform, SST, and all these infrastructures, code tools that make it easy just to type a few lines and then bring up your infrastructure. And we have one, I'm sure, Eric, you've used quite a bit, called CDK.
Oh, yeah.
Cloud Development Kit, right?
Yep.
And we said, well, we could switch to CDK and just ask all our Amplify users to like start using that. But there's some thorny sides to CDK if you used it, if you've used it a lot. And it's really powerful, but it has a little bit higher of a learning curve to really understand it and to get things working.
Yep.
So with Gen 2, yeah, go ahead.
That's all. And just so you know, I'm just finished off a cold, so I'm muting and coughing and unmuting. So that's, you see me, but yeah. So that's always been kind of my take on it. Yours too, but obviously yours is real. My title is developer advocate, right? But I'm kind of a hack developer, which, they're probably going to fire me because I've said this so much. I'm an architect, right? That's what I do. I know the architecture. I understand serverless. I know how to build distributed systems and those kinds of things. But when it gets into the pure code, and that's where I struggle with CDK. I struggle with the classes and inheritance and the different. A little bit of my background. My background is I actually have a degree in theology, but I did code on the side, and so I don't have that theory that you kind of need to embrace CDK as well. And I'm getting there, But that's why SAM, and I've been an advocate for SAM forever. I know SAM so well because it's just memorizing the configuration. So yeah, I agree with you. All that to say, I agree. The CDK can be quite a learning curve when you're just getting into coding or serverless or something like that.
Yes, yeah, and Sam's great. I love Sam, and you could probably teach me quite a few things about it. So we looked at some of these tools, and we looked at the command line, and we said, what if we create like a layer on top of CDK? We're calling it Gen 2, that simplifies some of these concepts. It also puts in the best security practices in place. It sets the right security rules. And so you have to write just a few lines of code, and it can create your app for you. And we really focused on 4 different areas to start off with. That was data. So we have this app sync layer, which is our managed data service that you can put data in. It's backed by DynamoDB. We have storage, which is, of course, our S3 storage. We have functions, which are Lambda functions. And then we have auth, which is backed by Cognito. So those are the 4 areas. But then we said, well, people are going to be limited if they just do these 4 areas. So what else can they do? Like, once if they want to break out of it. And so then we added in a robust system, since it's built on top of CDK. If you wanted to add in, let's say, an API gateway, then you can create your own API gateway. You can write it in CDK and you can connect it up and it'll work. And of course, Amazon Bedrock. I think we've all been talking about this a lot.
Of course, yeah.
Amazon Bedrock, super important. You can create we have special connections with our app sync. You can create these custom queries that basically talk to a Lambda function that talk to Bedrock, that would grab information and then return it back. So we've kind of already built in that you can basically add any AWS service.
Okay. All right. If you get CDK, you can add it. So yes. For instance, the service that I tend to go to, it's kind of my starters, is step functions. So I can build out my workflow, drop it in through CDK.
Yes.
Love it.
And then one other thing that we also wanted to make sure is that a lot of people don't know this, or maybe they have heard of it, but we have a hosting service. Yes. So we have an AWS Amplify hosting service, which is a way you can host any of your favorite static sites or server-side rendered sites I think in the front end world, we're a lot of big fans of Next.js. Do you use Next, Eric?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm
So,
more of a Vue. I'm old school still, but yeah, I've done some Next. Yes.
oh, trust me, I'm a huge Vue.js fan. Before I was
Okay.
working here, I worked tons on Vue,
Yeah.
and I'm a huge fan, as with you. But if you're looking at Nuxt, which is
Yes.
the Vue equivalent, we support that too. We support API routes,
Yep.
server components, and all of that. So we have a complete
Serverless
hosting.
land. Sorry to interrupt you. Serverless land is all Nuxt, and it's hosted on Amplify. So
Nice.
serverless land's a huge. We get thousands and thousands of hits a day. So
Yes. No. And I think at this point, if I was going to recommend a front end framework, I'd say you'd be fine with Next or Nuxt. The
yeah.
communities are great. Evan Yu, creator of Vue and
Yeah.
Vite and all such amazing tools, has been a very steady hand in that whole ecosystem, which I can go on about that. But so we have a hosting service, and the hosting
Yep.
service is tightly integrated into Gen2. So you can host your websites in Amplify hosting, or if you like, you can use this Gen2, build your back end, and then have the site be hosted on our hosting service and have the back end be connected up to it. So you can have this kind of all in one place. All your environments are in our Amplify console. You can see them all. You still can go into the console and go into Cognito and AppSync and do whatever else you need, but it's all kind of connected in one area, which is really nice. And you have a lot of flexibility. If you have a CI/CD pipeline, you're using Jenkins or something else, and you just want to use Amplify to host these backend things or data storage, and you don't need the hosting of the website, you can set it up that way too. There's no problems. Okay. You can also just quite a few, not all, just use different parts of the Amplify ecosystem. They might just use the hosting and they don't use the backend. So they might be just using the library. So you have a lot of different flexibilities. We also have a JavaScript library, a Flutter library, iOS, Android. There's just so many different things. I can keep talking about this forever, but what do you want to focus in on?
I know people are like, this is great, but show me the money, right? That's the, I mean, people are, I just quoted some old Jerry Maguire there, right? If you're probably too young for that, but so you're going to build something for us, yeah?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of play around with and show how to get started.
Okay.
I might cheat a little bit and show a completed app, depending on how far we get.
Yeah, that's so cheating. Yeah. That's called wisdom. Okay, I'm gonna bring your screen on if you're ready.
Sure.
All righty, here we go.
All right, so if anytime I ever start a new project, I always start with the docs and anything. So I'll give a shout out to the docs here.
Yes.
Can I join the chat? Oh, I was gonna say maybe I'll just paste this in the private. If anybody
if you paste in the private, I'll paste anything over. And just so you know, for those watching and those watching maybe in the future, watch for these links. But if you're watching live, throw your questions in. Obviously, this is Serverless Office Hours. This is so you can ask questions. We have Eric, the expert, here, and then there's me. And we'll, we can answer those questions, and we'll get that taken care of. And yes, as Eric posts documents and links and stuff, I'll make sure that we post them out to everyone. So.
Okay. Yes. All right. So definitely the docs. We have a quick start guide, which we're making some updates to this. You can start with a template if you want to just start with a GitHub template that has all the code in there, and then it walks you through how to connect that to Amplify hosting, and so you can host it. There's also a really nice feature I want to talk about is there's a sandbox feature. So I think we have it. Deploy cloud sandbox.
Yeah. Okay. I've played a little with the sandbox. Tell us what that is.
Yes.
I interrupt a lot, just so you know, Eric.
No, please interrupt as much as you can. I could go on and on. So the sandbox environment is something a little bit new to the Amplify ecosystem. So one common complaint we had with Gen 1 was that customers wanted to test locally, and it wasn't super straightforward or simple to test your Lambda functions or things to test locally. And you had to you have to create your own third-party apps to test your your database connections and all that. And so we thought, why not have a very straightforward way to create sandboxes so you can test locally? And what this does is you run this command and it deploys, it creates an ephemeral environment that's in the cloud with all the services that you defined in your app. And then it creates all those. So let's say you have a Cognito service, it'll create Cognito, it'll create your data, it'll do all that. And then you can test locally. And then when you're done, you basically Control-C it, you can delete it, and then it'll delete all the infrastructure. So you can just test once and then delete it. It's flexible though. If you want to have one sandbox environment for multiple users, you can do that as well and kind of share this one sandbox. But it's
That's
kind of
amazing. Yeah.
To
If you've spent so for those watching and so you're talking to guys, I build backends all the time. We build constantly, SAM, CDK, we're building that out. And it's like, well, but we really need multiple. We need to test this and things like that. So we're setting up and then sometimes I break the rules. I use the same account, right? And that becomes problematic for name classes, things like that. So then, okay, now I got to spin up a new account, which is easy because I work for Amazon. But maybe, if you don't, it's like, well, I don't have another account available. I love this isolated test environment to test this out. This is amazing.
Yes, it is. So I kind of started a little bit front here, but let me go back and show you. So right now I have the sandbox running already, but I kind of want to show you kind of from the start. So
yeah, that'd be great.
Let me just delete it. So right there, you saw when I hit Control-C, I can press Y on the keyboard, and it will delete this environment that I have created. But if I go to Node, so I have a brand new Vite app up and running. This is what it looks like out of the box. I just went ahead here and deleted some of the files and the CSS. Actually, let me delete this. And it just doesn't have any CSS or anything running right now. It just has this root. And let me delete these three so we can start basically from the beginning. And yeah, this is what it looks like. So if I bring it back,
boilerplate.
Yep, this is boilerplate.
All right.
For those of you who don't know, this is the same thing as doing npm create vite at latest on the command line.
All right.
So let's see. Okay, still deleting the environments. This will just take a moment. So I think in the meantime, while it's running,
that's some teardown that's happening, yeah?
Yes, so it's doing some teardown of this environment, which will take a few minutes. So we need to install a few libraries to get up and running. Can you see it okay? Or do you want me to?
Yeah. Yep, yeah, it's quite big. It looks great. And I can blow it all the way up if we need to.
So the few environments I need. So I'm using Node. I think I'm using Node 22. So you can use 20 as well. I think it supports like 18.7 on up.
I was going to say, it's 18.7. Yeah, I think because I was looking at that earlier.
Mm-hmm. So we'll do npm I, and we'll do AWS. Well, we'll start with AWS Amplify. So this is the main JavaScript library for Amplify that you'll need to use. And the other one is AWS Amplify UI React. And this will be the React library. So let me talk a little bit about that for a second. Oops. I know what's happening. I was doing if you were here earlier, I did a live stream where I installed a few libraries.
Yeah.
And there were special libraries.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's do this. Let's delete the node modules.
Send this back here.
And we'll delete the package lock. Package. Let's delete the
package.
Let's just do it and the node modules first. Oh, it's still. Let's wait until this is done.
All right. No worries.
Let's do this. Let's do npm I. So I'm going to. Usually, typically, when you have a clean install, it doesn't have all these things in it, but let's do npm I real quickly. And that will just make sure I am clean. Okay, let's try this again.
All right.
Let's do AWS. If we don't do this works, we'll try something else. AWS Amplify UI React. All right. Hey, okay, so we got farther this time.
There we go. Live coding for the win right there. Thanks, Daryl.
Okay, so now we have the UI React. So while it's while this is, yep, cool. Let's tore it down.
All right.
The UI React library is really nice. If you go back into our docs and click UI library, we created a bunch of really fun components and things to help developers when they're using Amplify. So we have a full components library that has everything you expect, like buttons, headings, images, and then connected components. We have like the authenticator, count settings. We're going to use something called the authenticator so we can wrap our whole app with this. And this adds in ways, instead of me sitting here and creating a login page and a forgot your password page and a sign up page, I can just copy and paste a few lines boilerplate and it adds this to my app. Is the idea.
So this is huge in that we get so caught up in building these things, we never get to the code that matters, right? We use this term at AWS called undifferentiated heavy lifting. This is like the perfect example of that. This stuff doesn't matter. I mean, maybe you'll style a little bit, but it's all at the end of the day, it's all the same. Log in, forget password, log out, create account, things like that. So I'm one of those that use partial parts of Amplify. It's always this part. I always use their authenticator against Cognito on the back end. Yeah.
Exactly. Let me do. Okay, so now I'm just making sure I have everything clean in my account here. Okay.
Understood.
All right. So we have. The next thing you need to do, and this is all in the quick start guide, is I'm going to run this npm create amplify at latest, and this is going to create the boilerplate code for Gen 2. Okay. And this will have, they'll install the packages, but it will also add this folder structure that we have here. So come back over to here. We have now this new Amplify folder, and inside here, let's close some of these. We have this new auth folder that has a resource. What did he say? I'm watching a black screen video.
Yeah. I'm just verifying. I'm sorry to interrupt you. He's saying he's got a black screen video, but I just tested. That's why I got a little confused because I'm hearing double now. I just tested to make sure, and we're seeing a full screen and everything seems to be working. Lucas, you might do a refresh on this.
Oh, may I ask, where do you think most of the developers need help on working with Amplify?
Yes. Yeah, I was going to ask you that question.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, well, first, we have lots of ways you can get help. We have a whole Discord channel that's linked in our docs that if you have questions, it's probably the best place to go to get answers. You can set up a thread inside there. We do weekly office hours where we help people that have questions and they need additional help. We can get one-on-one support, which is really great. I think most people, the vast majority of people we don't hear from because they figure out to read the docs and everything. But when people do have problems, it's maybe a little bit more when they're trying to create a little bit more complicated actions. Like maybe their setup is, I'll give you a good example. Like the other day, someone's trying to set up GitHub login as an additional way to log in. Now, with Cognito, it doesn't support, it supports federated logins, but it doesn't support GitHub out of the box. So there's quite a bit of configuration that you need to do.
Yeah.
And so I was helping a customer on this. I actually have a video on how to do this. And then they were trying to do something additionally to do some refresh token stuff. So I see some like more complicated scenarios in there. If you go into our Discord and look at the help section, you can see all the different types of questions that people have. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Lucas can see us now.
Yeah, you can see us now. I'd say along the same lines, it's whenever you leave the happy path, right? So the happy path is what everything it's designed to do, just kind of straight. When you get to, because that's where I've run into when, look, I need to, I need to change the configuration on a Lambda that's being generated, or I need to, those kinds of things. That's where I've run into where folks need help as well.
Yes. And not to say that you can't go outside the happy path, because that's one thing we wanted to make sure. We didn't want people to use Amplify and get to be like, well, this is only good for simple or demo apps. We wanted to make sure that you could scale with it. You can use it for large companies, even enterprises. We've used Amplify at some point. So
yep.
we definitely made it in there. But when you get into those more complicated situations, that's when like normal documentation doesn't have every single scenario in it.
Agreed. Yep.
So here is our resource file. So this was automatically generated when we ran that Amplify at latest, that npm create. So this will create a Cognito backend for us, and it'll set the email to true. And this is just boilerplate that it just automatically generated for us. It's also going to create a backend for AppSync. So this is going to be our data layer here. And if you've dealt with data layers in the past, you usually have a schema. Let me make this a little easier to see. You have a schema, which is your model, which is essentially the fields and the rules for each field for your apps. In this case, it creates a to-do model and it creates a content. Now, this is AppSync, and AppSync uses GraphQL behind the scenes. Have you used GraphQL, Eric?
I have, yeah. I'm not an expert at it, but I have used it, yeah.
So in the background with GraphQL, it uses something called resolvers. So you have to basically enter in or tell how to do queries against your database. You have to resolve everything so that way this GraphQL language, it works correctly. So when you do queries or mutations, deletes, it works. We do that all for you by adding this dot model. We create all the resolvers for you for all the create, read, update, delete list items that you want. So with this here, we create all this for you. We also connected up to Cognito. So in this case, this says anybody can create this as long as they are a guest. In other words, they don't have to be logged in to use it. Right.
So some things about just, first of all, just so you know, we've got a question coming up here, and I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to have you answer this real quick. So if you're not familiar with, GraphQL, obviously GraphQL is, the client requests the different data they want. It's a different way than a REST API. But then we have AppSync, and AppSync is our kind of wrapper around GraphQL. And AppSync allows you to do two-way, WebSocket type or traffic, things like that. And then if you're not familiar with Cognito is a service that we have that lets you do authentication. And then you can do authorization against it. So it can manage user pools for you. And then you can write, what he's doing here is authorization against a user that's authenticated through Cognito, and it handles all that. And then we got this question. Yeah. Oh, good. All right, good. So we got this question. Can I use Amplify library for doing AWS auth-log in a current front end Quasar SPA framework?
So if you're using Quasar, I've used Quasar on Vue.js. I have not. I don't know if it supports React or Angular. I will say though, we have libraries for that authenticator component. It's our most popular one. So we have basically for all the UI libraries, we have it for Angular, React, Vue. If you're using a Quasar app with Vue, we support Swift, React Native, Android. So yes, you can definitely add that in there. You might have, depending on what styles you have, you may need to tweak or do some overwrites of styles if our styles overwrite something, or if your styles overwrite something on our component, then that could be an issue. Typically, our styles are being CSS, are very specific, have very specific naming. So, and they're scoped directly to the component. So you probably won't have that happen. But the other way around, sometimes your styles may leak into our component. But I've had lots of people use it for Vue apps, React apps. Everything works fine. Yep, that should work.
I'm trying to find, there's a link in the Amplify documentation. I think it's Gen 1, but Eric, you can correct me, that actually shows you what parts to use in an so you're not using the full Amplify framework. You're just adding this part of the authentication. And I'm trying to find that. I know I've used it before. So if I find that, I'll post that, Lucas.
Yeah, please do so. So we have, going back to the demo here. Yeah, we have this boilerplate code in here, and I'm just going to run this command, ampx sandbox. Permission denied. I might have to go off screen here and fix this.
No worries. Yeah.
Let me see here.
You gotta do your.
Oh, what's it happening here? Let me make sure I have everything closed. Ampx sandbox. I wonder why it won't let me run that.
Do you need to run your login? Did your
login
expire?
So let me try logging in off screen here. So we have our internal way of logging in to AWS apps, which won't make any sense if I put that on screen. So let me.
Nope, it won't. So yeah, we use our own internal way. I'll explain this while you're doing that. We use our own internal way, and it's really nice. It's actually built on organizations where we can get, we can move around using roles instead of users. Where we log into different AWS accounts because we all use different ones, and so but it expires, so you have to reset that. So
okay, I logged in, but I'm just gonna do the good old RMRF on my node modules and do the npm install again.
That'll work
to make sure everything is up to date. If this doesn't work, I might have to blow away the package lock file. Oh, let's see if we got any farther now. Okay, great. Now it's working.
Yeah.
So what I did there, sometimes since I was changing a bunch of things around, for whatever reason, that folder wasn't letting me run that command. So now what it's doing, it's creating the CloudFormation. It's using our CDK in the background. It's compiling to CloudFormation. You can actually see this in the console if you look at the CloudFormation. And it's creating it, and it's creating all these resources in the back end in an ephemeral environment.
So real quick on that NPM thing, and Eric, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but what generally happens there is when you're manually moving stuff around like that, sometimes your version, your dependencies get off. So a dependency that you may need may have been is installed, a different version was installed, and then you installed something after it, and so those mismatch, and then that happens. So by blowing that away and reinstalling it, it refactors all the dependencies and installs them properly. So would that be a good explanation?
Perfect. Yes. Right. So what this will do is it's going to create Amplify outputs file, which is right here. And then we'll be able, once this is completely done, it'll populate that file, and we'll be able to import that in. Are you still there, Eric?
Yep, I'm here. I just was moving your screen to a bigger, so people can see what you were showing. Yeah. I was moving us around a little bit.
Perfect. So this one thing is, when the first time you run the sandbox environment, it takes a couple of minutes. That's why it took a couple minutes to delete, and it takes a couple of minutes to run. So while it's doing, we can probably do a little bit of coding. The way I approach this is we need to do two things. As first, we need to tell Amplify that we've created the sandbox environment and that we want to run it. So we can import in Amplify, and you can see here I have Amazon Q running, so it's giving me some suggestions. AWS Amplify. And then we need to import in the AWS exports file. Now, Amazon Q actually has this name a little bit wrong. It used to be called AWS exports, but it's actually called, I think it's down one layer. It's called Amplify outputs. And then the last thing you need to run the Amplify configure to AWS exports. And this will configure it so it'll work. And you want to put this inside like the main or the first file that runs as soon as the app loads.
Q will figure that out after you change it a couple times.
Yes, Q is Q is very, very helpful. Definitely install it. We actually worked, a little tangent for a second, we worked directly with the Q team to make sure that when we had this new generation 2, Amplify Gen 2, that it was able to help users with Gen 2. So if you type in a question to Amazon Q saying, hey, I'm using Gen 2, I have this problem, it's pretty good at coming back with some responses and helping you out.
Nice.
One other thing we need to do is we'll need to import in this style. So you got this, right? So the Amplify UI React styles.css, and this will give the nice look and feel of the authenticator component. And what I want to do is I want to just wrap the whole app by the authenticator. Let's see if we can just have like a app that you can only get access if you're authenticated.
Okay.
So I'm going to add in this authenticator. And it's not imported in. So it's UI React. Now, one thing I like to do is if you look at the documentation, it even tells you there's this really nice feature. It's probably hard to see, but there's this sign out. There's a couple ways you can add in sign out buttons, but this is a really simple way. So we have sign out here and there. And then we can add in a button. And we'll import this button in. So this UI React library has a bunch of components that we can have in here. And then we can add in, just like we see here, a button, basically an on-click for a sign out. On-click, and we'll do sign out. I don't think I want the user right now. And then I'm just going to surround it by partial. There we go. So now we have a button for sign out, and it can be like, hello demo world. And nice thing, since we're using our component library, it actually has a thing called heading. And I'll do there, if I can spell it right.
Yep.
Heading.
So I've always said I'd be 10 times a developer if I could just spell.
And I'll do level 2. And then for this one, this is, by the way, these are both from the UI React library. I can add a variation, and I kind of like make it look destructive. I think there's one called, yeah, destructive. You see this is all typed, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, so let's see where we're at. Okay, so it looks like it's done. And we're just going to run npm run dev. We're going to open it up. Oh, it's already opened up.
I love how fast Vite is.
Yeah, Vite.
Yeah, dude, when we used to use the old servers, it Vite's so fast.
And by the way, if you're a Next fan, like we were talking earlier, this works definitely with Next. Right now, it only works with client components.
Okay.
But we do have some, if you're doing data operations, we do have server components if you want to work with data.
Okay.
All right, so now at this point, I need to create an account. If you don't mind, I'm going to put this on a different screen because I don't want to leak my email.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do this in a different screen. I do have a couple of throwaway emails, but all right. So I'm bringing it back over here. And now it's asking me for a code. So I'm going to check my email on my phone. And put it in 091089. Try that again. And then click confirm. Cool, I'm logged in. That little red spot there is because I forgot to type in here sign out. There it is.
There it is.
All right, and if we click sign out, I won't do that, but it should, well, we'll sign out here. And on my other screen, I will log in again just to make sure everything works. All right, now I'm logged back in.
Never have I built an authorization that fast.
Great. So yeah, so we're logged in here, and that's all done through this Amplify folder. and this auth that we set up. And we have our button here. So the next thing we could probably do is we have a couple of things. We could try to be a little more fancy and create a more complicated schema right now. But since we're just testing things out, maybe we can see if we can just add something to this model and display it. So we have a to-do model. So maybe we can figure out a way to list to-dos and delete to-dos, things like that. So we'll come back over here. And we do have one thing called input. And that's also a UI React library. So here it is. Let's kind of play around with this a little bit. One thing I like to do is have, I like Tailwind. I'm a big Tailwind fan, but we can install Tailwind. We might, let's see if we can stick with the UI React libraries first. So let's add Vue. This is not Vue UE like the framework, but more like Vue. And well, you know what? I'm going to do Flex. I'm going to play around with see this. We have a Flex component, which we can add some Flex to it.
What's the hotkey you're hitting to update the imports?
Oh, so I'm hitting on my keyboard. I'm on a Mac. You can hit Command period.
Okay.
And then it'll automatically find it and just add the import in.
Nice.
And
now that you got rid of views, so now the views say it's not being used. So gotcha.
Exactly. So you can see here now it put it in this column format, but I want it to not do that. So I have a whole bunch of items here. So one is called direction. I can do column. Is that what it's called? I think it's called.
Did you want it to shorten to dir?
Yeah, let me make sure here. Yeah, it's dir.
Okay. That's well, there's dir and there's direction below. Yeah, there you go.
Here, this will be easier. Column.
There you go.
All right, so now I have a column here. Nice. I can set, these are all things
oh my gosh
that you can add in. Instead of having to write CSS for everything, you can just type it all directly in here.
I'm chuckling because I'm like, it takes me 9 hours to center text anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, with the Flexbox and stuff. So this is great.
Yeah, so I can make this 500. Margin, I could just do auto. It'll center it. So now I have my little demo world app. Okay. And then we want, we'll call it, we'll do on click. And I always just do a console log clicked. And then on button here, we'll add a new button. Let's see what Amazon Q thinks we should add here. There it is. Click me. Okay, so we have this. You can see here I've clicked on the console. But what we want to do is we have this input here. We probably want to do a use state. So we'll have, we'll call it to do text, set to do text equals React use state. And we'll console log the to do text. And then on this input here, we'll do it like an on change.
Okay.
And then we'll do set to do text to this e.target.
So that e is the
value
event, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So now if we do this again, React is not defined. I forgot to do this. Add import. That once, oh, I should have said that. That was the control dot again.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's all right.
So now if I do hello world, it clicked me. Yep, it says hello world. So it's getting it. The other way to do this, if we had time, we could surround this whole by a form and then do like an on submit. But just a quick demo, we'll just do it this way. We can also set to do text back to blank after you hit it. So now it will be hello world. Hello. Oh, and then to get that working, we'd do value equals to do text. Now if you do hello world, and now it disappears. All right. So the next thing we need to do is to actually have it talk to our backend and submit it.
Yeah. Okay.
So if we go back to the resource TX, it actually has a pretty good information on how to do that. You have to use this generate client and then set up the schemas here. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to copy and paste this.
Okay.
And obviously, if this is a real app, we'll probably split this into a couple different components.
Right.
So we're going to, the schema is in the, if I can hit the right button, /. It's, you have to go down a level, and then it's in my data, and then resource. And this I'll put here. And the schema here essentially says that this client is going to tell us that we can do all these different functions that we want to do. So we want to take the view text, basically to if not to do text return, but just one edge case there. So we can do const, and we'll make this an async function. Will equal await client dot. And really nice thing about this, I was talking about this is GraphQL, but you don't have to necessarily be a GraphQL expert and know GQL and do everything like that to do this. So now I can just do to do, and I can do a create, delete, get list. What do I want? I'm going to do a create. Okay. And it already knows that I need a content.
Okay.
And that's going to be the to do text.
Yeah. Okay.
And then from here, I can grab data and errors out. And since we're doing a live demo and I'm sure I fat fingered something, I'm going to console log both those out.
Fair enough.
What I like to do too, this is an ES6 thing. You can always rename this. I could like to call this to do, my to dos. And then I can be like output my to dos and then errors.
So we've got a question coming in when you get a chance.
Yes, let's take a second.
All righty. Says, I'm just curious, what do you guys think the future generation of developers say about the code we write these days? And I hope they say this was the best they could do back then. Okay, this is more of I think they'll laugh. I think I laugh at my own code from back then. You know what I mean? What do you think, Eric?
This is, I think you're right. I'm going to steal your answer. I've looked at code I've written 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, there's so many better ways to do these things, and just modern tooling keeps getting better and better. And I know AI gets thrown around a lot, but if AI is the worst it's ever been at this point, it'll ever be, and how amazing it is, things like Amazon Q and all the other code completion tools out there, I just can imagine like things are going to be so much easier and so really cool to work with.
I would also throw out, it's interesting. I've been doing computers for a long time. I kind of gave that I had done it on the side, but I've worked at, I've worked for multiple groups. I used to work for a guy who did a lot of military coding back in the 80s, earlier, that kind of thing. And they had to do the punch cards and stuff like that. So they had to do very, very efficient memory using code and things like that. And so it's kind of funny because our code now with storage and memory that so readily available. Of course, AI is changing that because the limitation of GPUs. But we don't have to write the same efficient code that they did. So in some ways, it's probably gotten a little sloppy. But then in some ways, it's gotten much better. I mean, I think you could go two ways with that. It's kind of interesting.
Yes, for sure. Okay, let's continue on. I just thought of something. I kind of want to add a gap here of 1 rem. Maybe look a little nicer. Yeah, a little bit more gap,
Nice.
and then you can add some. We can add some. Well, I'll come back to that. I'd say we can add some text to it, but
okay.
All right, so now we have this to do here, and I'm just going to output it out to the console at first, and then we can display it. So I have, let's see here, I have console up. I'm going to put in, by the way, this is my OCD. I'm going to put the variation on this to be primary. Hey, now it looks like a different button. All right, and then also, I kind of don't love the width of this. I'm going to make this width, I don't know, 10%. Oops. Wow, that's too small. 20%, 30. Okay.
There it is.
And then I think you can do align.
That's how I code. Try? Yes? Maybe?
Self,
no?
End. Flex end. Okay, I like that better. All right, so now it's on the right-hand side, just to make it a little bit different looking. So, all right, so we'll put in a to-do, like test to-do. I'm gonna click me. And okay, output here. Okay, not authorized. Oh, I know what I needed to do. So it says it's not authorized, meaning that it didn't add it. And the reason that is if we go back to our resource auth, or not resource auth, or resource data, we're saying right here that this user, this to-do, is allowed by guest, but we're logged in. We just added in that login.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So we have to do authenticated. And then the default authorization mode, we're going to change it to user pool.
Okay.
So I'm going to do that.
For those watching, when you authenticate against, when you hit a page that's protected by Cognito, everybody gets a guest role automatically. And it's a very, very limited, but it allows you to allow that guest to do something. It always starts with least privileges. So so it had said that only guests can do that, and then you explain the rest of that. But there is a guest role, and then there's an actual user role that has more privileges.
Yes, and you can have different roles. So you can have, like what I'm doing right now, we could set the to-do to also work with authenticated and unauthenticated. We have a lot of flexibility here. Like you can see here, this is an array. So I can add different, allow custom, I can allow groups. Owners basically means that only this user can create, read, update, or delete, but other users can't.
This is where you're getting in that granular row level stuff. If you created it, you can delete it. Nobody else can. That kind of stuff. That's really slick.
Yep, and you can add field level authorizations too. Like if I just want this content to be authorized, only certain users can authorize it, or only logged in users, I can do that for now. For this, it means this whole model is authenticated.
So this is the power of identity and access management under the hood.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So of course, I made the change. Usually, changes to AppSync take a little less time than other changes. So this shouldn't take too much. You know what the quickest is? It's done. Is if you do Lambda, we have swapping, live swapping.
Hot swap. Yeah.
Hot swap. Exactly. We do hot swapping,
swap,
so that way those are really quick if you're changing stuff from Lambda. All right. So we may run into more problems. So let's see here. This is a test to do. click me. All right, cool. So it looked like it worked this time. And the way I know it worked is that it didn't return an error. And it says the content created at ID updated at.
So that's sitting in a database somewhere.
Yes. So it's sitting in our DynamoDB database. So now if we want to get that information, we can do that. Now there's a couple ways to do this. Let's create a function called grab all to-dos. We'll make it async. And once again, if we come back here, it even shows us, if I always forget, you can always look here to how to do it. It's in the it's in here. But I'm going to copy and paste this. So we have const to-dos, and we're going to do the wait client models to-do list. And this is all typed. If you can see here, I can do wait client dot models to do. Oops, that was my bad. Wait client dot models dot to do, and then create list delete. They're all there. All right, so now we have this data, this to-dos data, but we need to do something with it. And so I'm going to create a new one called to-do set to-dos. It's not the same as the other one. Rack, and I'll do use state. And this time I'm going to set a type. So we have types, that's schema that we imported in before, this one right here. We
just
can
give you a heads up. We're at about a 4-minute warning. Okay. So, yeah.
All right. Let's see if we can do it in 4 minutes.
Actually, we're not going to Twitch this one. So if we go over a little bit, that's okay. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is going to be an array. So we'll have an empty array. We'll have to-dos and set to-dos. And so I set a type of this to-do set to-do to the schema, which is nice. It's built in in the type. And so I should be able to do set to-dos to this to-dos. There it is. And I don't like having the same name here twice, so maybe I'll call it my to-dos. Otherwise I get confused.
Yeah, I like that.
My to-dos. All right, so it's set it. And then what we can do is maybe inside the flex here, we'll do a good old to-dos dot map. And then we'll do a div. Let's let Q tell us. Let's see here.
Daryl asked, will the AIs do all the coding talks? No. You still need us. Yeah, that's right.
To do, let's see here. Do I have one too many?
Should be to-do.talk or to-do.content?
There it is, content.
Content, yeah.
And I'll make this
I contributed. There it is, right there.
I'll add the view back in, even though I'm doing command dot, update the import.
Cool.
All right. So let's see what that does. And then we have this grab to-dos, grab all to-dos. We can try to do a use effect. And then we'll have it just run once as soon as the app loads, and we'll run the set grab all to-dos. And it's mad at me that I don't have the right. It wants a grab all to-dos in the hook. But for now, let's see this works.
Okay.
All right.
This
is it. There it is. There's our to-do.
All right. There you go.
Oh, it's also complaining that I'm doing this map here, and I don't have a key. So you could do key equals to-do dot ID, or you can do the index. You're right.
Yeah.
So there we go. This is our test to do. So if we add a new to do, test to do 2, probably the best bet also is after it adds the to do to run grab all to dos.
So could you have done that as a subscription as well?
Exactly. That's a good point.
Okay. Yeah. Rather than doing a RESTful or a sync up, or it creates a two-way conversation with the subscription.
Yes. All right. So we at least were able to authenticate a user, add to-dos. The next thing we probably want to do is clean this up, add a delete to-do button. But I guess we're just about over.
We are, yeah. We're at time right now. So, hey, so Eric, this is super cool. Hopefully y'all learned something in working with that. We got to have you come back and maybe you deploy and show the hosting and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But this ability, one, I'm thinking I really need to dig into React, obviously, or Next and that kind of stuff, obviously. I'm getting this is a good demo. Thanks, Dennis. I'm glad you like this. Hopefully that helps y'all. Next week, we're actually going to be jumping into debugging on serverless. If you build serverless apps, that's always fun. We're talking more about the back end. How do you do serverless testing? And that's going to be Paul Zibkiewicz. I'm sure I'm saying his last name wrong. It'll be me again. Julian is in Copenhagen this week, and he's out next week. He is at Go To Copenhagen. I'm wearing my Go To shirt in support of him. Eric, thank you so much for doing this. I've wanted to see this for a while. It's really cool to see it in action. And if you haven't checked out Amplify, I really encourage you to do it. It's a quick way to start building robust apps. Sometimes we think, well, it's just a toy for little things. No, this is how you can build very robust apps very quickly. And when you dig in more, and we'll have to do this again and have you dig in more to the back end as well. So, any shameless plugs you want to throw out real quick, Eric?
No, yeah, just reach out to me if you want to, ErikCH, ERIKCH on Twitter, and send me a question. I have my DMs open. If you have a question, or go to our docs.amplify.aws and join our Discord. There's a link at the bottom.
All right, beautiful. With that, we're going to sign out. If you missed this, as always, it's on YouTube under Serverless Land, and you can rewatch it and follow it. And with that, we'll see you later.
Bye. Thanks for having me.